Hey everyone, welcome to my session at the Kentico Xperience Connection Conference, a hitchhiker's guide on how to migrate from Portal Engine to MVC core. That's right, didn't actually have time to tell the organizers, but the session title really should be about migrating to MVC core, not just MVC. I'm Brian McKeever, Kentico Xperience MVP and co-owner at BizStream. We are a longtime Kentico Xperience Gold partner. We've been partnered up with Kentico for over 10 years now and enjoy working in it just about every day. I'm an MVP because of the fact that I've been using the platform for almost that whole time and have a deep level of experience with it and just truly enjoy using it because it's helped me kind of grow my business and do different things with my clients. And I've had some great success with the platform and couldn't recommend it more. And I'm really excited here to tell you all about the MVC first style of development that we've been kind of enforcing at BizStream for the last 2, 3, 4 years even. But now with .NET Core, it's even more of a compelling story. And because Kentico Xperience 13 is all about a .NET Core first experience from a development standpoint, why would we not talk about .NET Core today? So let's get into it. In case you don't know, my blog over at mcbeeve.com, which is my high school nickname, there's a long story behind that, has been running in Kentico for darn near 10 years, actually. And it's got a lot of blog posts, and it's kind of been my tidy home for a long time. So if you look at the picture of this cottage, it's kind of just like the old mcbeeve.com. It's a website that was built actually way back in Kentico 5 or 6 probably. It's got a couple hundred blog posts of all my Kentico tips and tricks and best practices from this whole time period. And it's built in the Portal engine because that's what you did back then with the technology like Kentico CMS. And recently I kind of upgraded it to the Raptor, which is version 12 of Kentico Xperience, in case you don't remember. That was the key thing from last year's conference. Well, fast forward, I finally got to the time to actually upgrade my blog to version 12, and then some things in the technology world changed that kind of inspired me to maybe think about maybe the home isn't quite working so well for me any longer. We look at this as a nice cottage. It's actually from the movie, in case you haven't seen the movie or read the book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I hope at this point you kind of know that if you're watching the session and maybe did some research on it. This is Arthur Dent's home on Earth when the movie first starts. I'd like to think of this as a great way to think of mcbeeve.com. It did a great job for many years. No, it didn't really have a 3-stall garage for my multiple cars, or it didn't have a lavish swimming pool or even a swim-up bar, but a guy can dream. But the cottage, it's done its job. I've got a lot of comments about the tips and tricks I have with my blog posts, and it's a really comfy place to live, and I've been living there for many years. Well, that kind of changed a couple of years ago, actually. And it's been in the back of my mind to think of, hey, is this still going to be my home for a long time going forward? And to switch a little bit into the tech world, Microsoft announced, actually even before this graphic, probably like 2017 or maybe even 2014 when they first started .NET Core, that .NET Core is the future of where Microsoft's going. And now as of 2020, it's actually called .NET 5. It's the merger of all the .NET frameworks, the full framework, the standard framework, the core framework. There was lots of change that's happened in the last couple of years in the .NET world, all for the good, because you get a ton of benefits of being cross-platform, more performance, more modern, better tooling, better developer experience. You can do different things and with CLI tools and more connections to Azure and all these great aspects of the newest version of .NET framework. But what it really got me thinking about is with Kentico Xperience 12 and lower, and even back when I built the blog in Kentico 5, it was using the .NET full framework. And there are some ways of doing things back then that worked well back then, but they don't really fit this. So Microsoft is encouraging us as .NET developers to think about the future. That's what this graphic is illustrating. And actually, funny enough, November 2020, it's like basically now that .NET 5 is the most current gold release of the .NET technology. It's what projects are built on these days. It's what developers know. It's what they love. It's where they want to be. So that gave, some insight to me of, okay, it's at some point here, my home is going to have to change. I might have to move, right? Well, then Kentico responded about a year ago, maybe even 2 years now, with where Kentico Xperience was going. They released a lot of these charts and aspects of things that with 2020 and .NET 5 and .NET Core coming, that's right about the time where we want to finish Kentico Xperience 13. And that means to be the best that we can be with Kentico Xperience 13, we need to kind of let go of the portal engine. We need to let go of web forms. So when you start seeing Microsoft saying, here's the future, then you hear Kentico's strategy back it up with, here's where Kentico Xperience 13 is going. And again, they announced this like a year ago or 2 years ago. It's been out there for a while, and we've been encouraging people to use MVC 5 with the .NET framework to build Kentico Xperience sites. But now there's no real reason with the release of Kentico Xperience 13 to not be building .NET Core and .NET MVC Core sites with Kentico Xperience 13, because Kentico is saying it's time. We're ready as a platform. This new release supports it. It's MVC .NET Core first. And guess what? We're not really thinking about Portal Engine anymore. We're not going to build new features in Portal Engine. Still going to support it. So you could stay in that house as long as you want. It's not going to go anywhere. I mean, .NET framework will be around for years and years and years just because there's so much enterprise code that runs on it. But it's not going to have anything new. It's not going to get anyone excited. It's just going to be there. And we like to be where developers are excited, they're having fun, and they want to do these projects, especially on top of Kentico Xperience 13. So that was the signal that, yeah, I got to tear down the house. It actually kind of kills me to look at this picture. That's Arthur Dent from the movie. Just, this is what happens right when he went to go do something, came back and turned around, and the house was collapsed and demolished and buried. And, it's something that kind of makes sense with web forms and the way things are going. It's not something that you can change. And technology marches on. They marched right over his house and demolished it. And that's really what I decided to do with my blog. But at least it wasn't this. At least the earth didn't explode 5 minutes later after the house was demolished, and it didn't mean anything at that point. It was more like, okay, I got to tear down the house and rebuild it, not absolutely blow it up, right? So, again, it's from the movie. I hope the references are making sense. If they don't, well, go check out the movie, honestly. But just like in the movie, there's a general theme of don't panic. All sorts of craziness is happening. Technology marches on. The Portal Engine is going into pasture. The new thing is here with .NET Core. Kentico Xperience 13 is out there. Just don't panic. And that's my message for you today, too. If you're on the Portal Engine using the .NET full framework and you're Kentico 11 or 12, or you're just not there yet in MVC, don't panic. I'm going to tell you some tips and tricks today on how to migrate there, how to get there, and how to make sure you have a towel around. And hopefully I can be a good towel. I'm going to go through some steps that I took with my blog. I'm going to use my real-world experience of migrating from the Raptor or Kentico Xperience 12 to Kentico Xperience 13 with the insight that I had to go through. And I'm going to just point out things that I tripped up along the way so that hopefully I can save you some time when you're doing this with your projects. And it starts with content. This is what I tell people. I've been answering this question for about 2-3 years now. And the question is, well, how would we do this? Is there an upgrade? Can we upgrade to MVC from Portal? Well, we'll get to that in a little bit on what that answer means. But I tell them, like, you need to think about it in terms of there's an opportunity to re-look at your content model, or your content, and understand, is it still serving the right need? So I've talked to you about how this website's been around for a long time. I've got my tree here on the left. This is kind of what the blog post structure looks like in the middle. And there's the form of the fields around each blog post illustrated here on the right. And over the years, maybe like you've added a couple fields to try out some things. So I've got a Kentico Rocks file in there on top. I've got a post teaser, a post thumbnail. I'm really only using post thumbnail. I'm not using anything else. I got some other fields there at the bottom that I never really used and not sure what they even do anymore. And then I've got, just the structure of the content tree where I've got pages and content that's been there for years and I don't really need it. So do I really need to upgrade everything? Or should I look at this in terms of what do I really need? And I need basically not this, because those fields don't matter anymore. No, I need the thumbnail and I need tags of a blog post. I don't need this because the blog in the month and the year, it's kind of just extra stuff that no one really looks at that from a way of doing a blog any longer. I mean, that was popular tens of years ago with having a nice year or other aspect of something in your URL to get to a blog post. No, in today's world, it's just really not done. And frankly, I don't need a lot of this content either. I mean, if you look at one of these things, if I get this out of the way a second and come back, Denver 2012, that's actually from the 2012 version of this conference. That landing page I created back in the day for the Denver event. And I mean, this isn't even the recent Denver event. This is multiple. This is probably the original Denver event for those of you who are longtime conference goers. It's just stuff that I don't need, right? So step one, look at your content. You can look at your site design if you want to figure out the content, or look at the content tree like I was doing if it's simple. Either way, just step back, look at, and kind of come up with a content model. Because having a structured content model is incredibly important in the MVC world. It's more important by far than the portal engine world, where you could get away with having lots of pages and using page templates and just nesting pages within pages within pages. You can't really do that in the MVC world. You need to have a good content model. You need to step back and think about, all right, I don't have a blog post. I have articles. They're really just articles. I could have called it blog post, but article a little bit more generic. It applies to more things these days, and I kind of like that as a better than just a blog post. And my posts or articles, they have a title, they have summary, they've got a content type of author, relationship to another content type of author, because I'd like to know who wrote the blog post or wrote the article. And every time I write an article, I don't have to rewrite my name over and over and over. I don't have to upload a profile picture. I don't have to change an image asset or change my bio every single time. I want to have one place where I can edit, store, and maintain that author content, and maybe allow for other authors later on to do guest posts on my blog. So that arrow to author kind of represents a relationship between an article content model and an author content model. And those things all have images and assets. So that's kind of the arrows down there to the lower right of the diagram in terms of the assets that go with text and dates and everything that makes up content. I like that being separately. We can isolate that and maybe put that in the media library in Kentico Xperience, or we could use other asset management systems. And anything that you create on the web these days needs some metadata or some taxonomy around certain things. So I know that any web page I make, whether it's an article page or an author page around content, I'm going to want that metadata of page title, description, keywords. Nowadays, you want open graph title and description image, and there's probably like 10 more. I didn't actually write down every single field I have here. I'm just trying to illustrate that instead of worrying about the technology first or the way the new CMS does this or does that, think about what you need from a content perspective. That's the first thing to do the right way, because everything flows from this. If you have a weak content model and it's not structured and it's kind of all over the place, the code will be all over the place, the solution will be all over the place, and you won't have a good result. So really one of the first things to do is be really cognizant of how you're creating your content models. Make them strongly typed so that they can be reused, so you can repurpose things, so that you can generate reusable aspects of the website from strong content. All right. And if you're not sure how to do that, there's actually some fantastic documentation on Kentico Xperience's site, as well as even Kentico Content's site, or you can get a hold of me too. After the content is defined, the second step of not panicking is around the URL structure. Okay. So I talked about this a second ago with the blog and the month and the year. That's how Kentico Xperience has done it for years. Many other CMSs do it this way, where they basically have a tree, and anything in that tree becomes part of the URL, and it's very bound to the structure that you set up. Well, with MVC, that's different a little bit, and even .NET Core. I don't really want those things in my URL any longer. I don't want /blog or /August 2020, right? In today's world, being SEO optimized is all about having the keywords that I want to go after as far to the left of the URL as possible. It should be more like this, right? I want to have mcbeeve.com /Kentico Xperience SQL database scripts, because I'm going after, from a keyword perspective, Kentico Xperience, which makes sense. That's my subject matter of my blog, right? And it's cleaner, it's a little bit more readable, and it just overall it's more modern. It's what you would expect on a nicely done site these days. So you're gonna have to pick a URL path or pattern that you want to go with your content, because they're related. If I have an article and I want to figure out what that URL is to the article, 9 times out of 10, I want to generate it from like the title that I type in. I don't want to have to actually manually create the URL or the URL slug, as we call it, or pattern, depending on what you want to use. I want to be able to create that article without thinking what the URL is going to be once the site is up and running. But you need to think about it when you're getting ready to do this migration from Portal Engine to MVC, because most likely it can be different, or you'd want it different than what you've had for years with Portal Engine. So those two things they're heavily related. You're going to want to tie them to different things and make sure that they're generating the right way. And 9 times out of 10, like I said, the title field or the name field is what's going to become that URL. So that's why think of the content model first, and then think of the URL structure, whether you have a different parts of your website. Mine is easy. I just have articles. That's a blog, right? Maybe I have /authors/author name, or maybe I just have /author name as another URL pattern that goes with that other author content type. But I want you to think about that. I want you to have a strategy for that before you write any code, because it's super important. You want to think of that from an SEO standpoint as well as a development standpoint, because this gets complicated when you start adding in things like multiple languages or translations or different regions. These URLs become a little bit more complex. Now, mine is easy because it's one place, it's one English language, and I don't have to worry too much about all those things. But other projects, you might have to think about that. And Kentico Xperience 13 supports that really well, but it can't tell you what it should be because it's up to you as the MVC developer to do that. You're not kind of just dependent on what maybe the Kentico Xperience 12 site would do for URLs or the Portal Engine would do. Now it's up to you to have a plan. And I'm giving you these tips so that you have a plan before you write the code, because you don't want to change it after you write the code. Trust me, that's way too expensive. Okay. After knowing what the model is and the URL pattern that you'd like, then it comes down to, now we're starting to get into the technology a little bit. But I'm not advising you to jump right in. What I'm saying is I want you to think about and be aware of the multiple ways you can do routing in Kentico Xperience. And routing, if you're not that technical, it kind of means, how does the website react when various URLs come into my website? So if I'm running mcbeeve.com and /landing page comes in, where does that go into the Kentico Xperience content tree to figure out what content should be displayed? Or if I'm going back to that other example of, Kentico Xperience SQL database utility scripts, does it pull the right article or blog post out? And that's all because of the routing code that you have to do with Xperience 13. And this is new. This didn't exist in Xperience 12 or lower. In Xperience 12 or lower, you were kind of on your own. There were some community plugins. There were some other basic tips of kind of do it this way, kind of do it that way. But you were kind of totally on your own. It wasn't in the box with the MVC support of Xperience 12. With Xperience 13, that's different. You have two choices. They summarize them as basic routing and advanced routing. And I'm going to get into that in a second because I think it's important to understand the difference. Because sometimes both can work. Well, one or the other can work, depending on your scenario. So with the basic content tree routing, it's really kind of simple. It's if you make a page type or a content type of, article, as long as that name is in the URL path that the route is about, of like /article/ the title of the article, if Kentico matches that based off, as long as you turn on the feature to a very simple level, right? Like there's nothing else going on. It's just /articles/ this. It's going to basically, at a minimum, just require you to have a view that handles that page type in a certain exact folder of views shared page types / the view of the page type by name. And what's really going on here is it's a hidden controller. Behind the scenes, there's one controller to rule them all, and it comes if you use the basic routing. The nice thing is, though, you can actually spin up and start a new site without writing hardly any code other than the presentation layer, the view. As long as you name it the right thing and you put it in the right place in the file system of your code base, it just kind of works. So if you need to do something prototype-wise, or you need to do something really, really simple where you're just returning like one string, this is a good way to go. It's a very simple, doesn't take you a lot of time, and you can get up and running and maybe have something to show, on your team, like, hey, here's how this could work with Kentico Xperience 13. It may be a good place to start to get used to some of the other features. And what that looks like from a code perspective is, again, 10 lines of code. If you write this 10 lines of code. And again, I got this example from the Dancing Goat Core starter site that comes with Kentico Xperience. This would actually respond with a field called text on your page, because basically this is going to return you a tree node that matches that really simple route of like /articles/article name. If that name matches, it's going to render this. It's that simple. You don't need to do anything else. It's behind the scenes. That one controller is just kind of taken over. So it's good. It's not great. Let's talk about advanced routing, because it's a little bit more exciting. And advanced routing basically still kind of uses the basic routing system of, are we going to match a route inside of our solution, but allow us to customize it and add into just the basics of having no controller, but now I can have my own custom controllers, and I can respond to my custom actions and do custom handling things. This is actually the more common way that you're most likely going to go, because it allows you to do the things that you're used to as an MVC core developer. You can actually create a controller. It kind of looks like this. You have an attribute routing system, which is somewhat familiar for people who are in the MVC world. I know it's not that familiar for if you're a portal engine developer, but when you see this, hopefully it's starting to make sense that I have my product controller here. My product controller is going to render the same kind of content for different types of products. So I've registered a route of coffee as the class name or the content type, and I've told it I want this route to use the product controller, and I want it to use the action name of product controller detail. And then the key here is kind of right in the middle. We're using dependency injection, which is a best practice with .NET Core. And it's simple because Kentico has a really easy way to do it along with the .NET Core world. And it makes sense. There's not like figuring out which way to do dependency injection. And if you see some of the other sessions, I think they're going to talk about that quite a bit. So I won't get into it. But again, the advanced routing, if you have that attribute registered and you're telling it what controller and what action to use, you're matching that up to your content type, and you're using the page data context retriever object to get you a reference to the page of content that you're pulling and pushing, well, not pushing, but you're pulling and using inside a product controller, inside of your actions. So that data retriever that comes in through dependency injection is super important, and that's the magic that kind of gives you the ability as a developer to do custom routing without a whole lot of effort. You're just adding attributes. That's pretty cool. But if you're going to use either one, either the basic routing or the advanced routing, don't forget, and this killed me, it literally killed me for a long time, that you have to, when you create the page types ahead of time, you have to enable these features. Currently, there's no way to, like later on, go back and toggle a bunch of these things on or off after you've created them. That's why I'm telling you this tip. Start about the content model definition, start thinking about the URLs, start thinking about routing before your project starts, so that when you come here, you'll know what to create and you won't have to, drop and recreate things and potentially lose content like, oh, happened to someone here standing right here. Yeah. So it's important to kind of know this stuff going into it. You have to use the URL feature to tell the system that this content, this page type is all about having something that's routable and being in a URL. Once you do that, then the routing, the basic routing and the advanced routing works. There's actually a third routing mechanism, which is something I didn't want to start with because I didn't want to confuse you. But the third one is fully custom. And you can still do that just like you did in all the years past in MVC. If you want to roll your own routing and do it 100% yourself and not use anything in the box, you can still do that with .NET Core. That's the beauty of .NET Core, and it's the beauty of Kentico Xperience as a .NET CMS. So don't forget, there's actually the third, and fully custom sometimes is required, depending on your requirements. But I think advanced routing is a sweet spot for most people. I'm really happy to see it in the box. And it should allow you to get your projects done faster. Okay. The next step about not panicking when going from Portal Engine to MVC is knowing there's something that's tripped up a bunch of people over the years, including myself most recently, where if your admin tool in your MVC core live site is in one place or two places, because unlike the Portal Engine, where you just deploy one installation of your code base and one installation of your database to a server, and everything's in one spot, it's all combined together. You start it, you stop it, it's all one website. With MVC, it's two websites. You have the admin tool, application pool deployment and project that you can push to one spot on a server, and then you can deploy your live site to another spot, or you can leave it on your local host and connect up to another admin tool. There's a lot more flexibility because there's actually complete separation of the MVC live site away from the admin tool. But with 2020, the way it has been, of course, it's been the year that they introduced a lot of same site cookies in the browsers with Google and Firefox and Microsoft, trying to make sure developers just hate these things even more. Honestly, maybe it's a little bit of a personal opinion, but if you have two domains and you're not using HTTPS SSL with a real cert, this isn't going to work. So make sure that you know that you have to enable the same site equals none and you're using HTTPS when you're doing .NET Core with Kentico Xperience 13. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem. If it's all running in one domain with a subdomain, it's a little bit easier. But the minute you go like to a QA server for the admin tool and you want to run localhost and try to use the page builder or the preview system, you're going to get a bunch of warnings. And if you don't do something the right way, you're going to get this. And this was what I was stuck at for a couple hours trying to understand, why isn't this working? And it's because I was actually running localhost for the live site and I was using the shared environment for the admin tool, trying to make it all work. The presentation URL wasn't the right way, and it just was causing all sorts of fun. And there's also the whole idea of third-party cookies that could come into play with not being same site, none protection allowed, or just the different aspects of the way you configure the cookies. So that's kind of annoying. The way to fix it, luckily though, is in the sample code base. It's by setting the set admin cookie same site none feature inside of the way you enable the Kentico service. Again, the Dancing Goat starting template with .NET Core is going to be your friend here. This is also something you can do in MVC 5. It's a little bit more work, but again, I'm trying to illustrate what things are like in .NET Core. So it's important that you have the right plan for how you're going to deploy your admin tool in your live site so that you don't waste hours sitting at a blank black screen like I did. So those are some things to think about to get you started. And again, I think I mentioned this at the beginning. People ask me all the time, can't we just push a button and upgrade the Portal engine? And I like to think at that point you can think of me as Marvin, like the graphic is showing here. And people have asked me this over and over and over. Is there a shortcut? Or is there a way we can do part of the site, not all of the sites? The answer, and just think of this in a Marvin tone of voice, is no. 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 There's no way to do it. You cannot just kind of upgrade with a button click from Portal Engine to MVC Core. It's just not going to happen. Too much technology has changed. There's too many different ways of doing things. Unfortunately, there's no easy button on this one. But there are some things that will upgrade. So this has been recently published, obviously, with the Kentico Xperience download. The installation manager is there as well. The installation manager will let you hotfix or upgrade a Kentico instance, and this still works. There is an actual upgrade plan for upgrading parts of your Kentico Xperience 12 application. Parts, mainly, not the content tree. That's why I was recommending all these planning things going into it, right? So this installation manager will get you pretty far. It'll upgrade things like the users and the objects in the system, the newsletter subscribers, things like that. It will upgrade, but not your content, okay? And there's even upgrade instructions. Kentico does a great job of having instructions for how to upgrade things. Follow these to a T. Don't skip steps. I know some developers out there who like to do that. I've seen it many times over the years. This is something that you want to read, you want to understand. It'll be in there with the public documentation, the release notes when the Kentico Xperience 13 download comes out. And by now it's out, so you can do that. And it goes into what will be upgraded, what won't. I highly, highly recommend you understand this document if you want to upgrade parts of your database from 12 to 13. It just makes a ton of sense, okay? But it doesn't do content. Like I said, that upgrade will do objects. Think of that as like users and newsletters and things like that, not content. So what do? We have a plan. We have a new content model. We have URLs figured out. We're kind of ready to go. We haven't really gotten into the code yet, but how are we going to get, if we're actually migrating from Portal Engine, how are we going to get content out of that site and into our new site with our new content model. Well, the way I look at it, and I thought about this originally, is I have two options, and so do you. You can either try to convert some page types from the newly upgraded thing, or from the old thing, the old database catalog, sorry, is probably the right way to say that. Or we have a new content model, which means we just have to create new page types and then figure out a way to get content in there. Well, let's go through these two choices. When I say convert, there are a few developers who are brave enough to understand the class form definition of Kentico Xperience objects. They've been there for a long time. It hasn't changed actually that much. We do some of this, which is, with great power comes great responsibility. But basically, if you look at the form definitions between the page types for version 12 to version 13, there's not hardly any difference. This diff is showing actually there's one field over on the right of the coffee content type or page type that has like an attribute that's like a true or false. It's like nothing, trust me. It doesn't even worth showing. And it makes me think that, maybe it won't be that hard to convert a page type from a portal engine page type to an MVC page type, because that's kind of what the difference is as what the versions prior to 13 thought of it as. Well, you can also look at this from the database. Here's a Kentico 12 CMS class table. These are where these things are stored in the database, and there's that field right in the middle. The class is content only, and those intrepid enough know that in the old world, if you switch that around to say true instead of null or false, suddenly your page type would work in a content-only site, which really meant it's an MVC site, not a portal engine site. Well, in 13, it's different. That bit is gone, and there's new things that actually represent some of the screenshots I showed you earlier with the features of a page type. And there's other changes to this table. So there's changes to this table. The form definition is kind of slightly different. So like this whole idea of like, can we just convert a page type from portal engine to MVC just doesn't feel great to me. And honestly, it'd be kind of like the Vogons and just shooting randomly and not hitting anything, which is what they're notorious for around the galaxy. They're just known as terrible shots with their weapons, even though the weapons look cool and they have cool green lasers that come out of them. They can barely hit the broadside of a barn, right? It's ridiculously funny at this part in the movie, honestly. So that's how I kind of look at converting. Not really. It's just, I wouldn't recommend it. What I would recommend is creating new page types, because it's going to be clean. It's going to be new. It's going to represent the content model I have encouraged you to set up ahead of time. I recommend creating new page types that represent article, as we've shown in this example. Here's actually my article page type. We've got our summary, our author, thumbnail, some metadata, open graph that actually come from other nodes. And I couldn't actually fit all of it in one screenshot, but just trying to show you that here's what I did. I created brand new page types in Kentico Xperience 13. So I didn't bring any of the baggage, or I didn't maybe get it in the way of stability of the project by like trying to convert or manipulate behind the scenes when I shouldn't. So I liked creating new page types, but that kind of got me to an issue of, what am I going to do? I have brand new empty page types with no content in them. So I'm a developer. This is what I love doing. I made a utility, and it allows you to extract portal engine content from the old database, the old Kentico 12 Xperience 12 database, and get it out so that I can use it to populate my new page types. And I will tell you all, I was really trying to make sure that this tool would be ready to just showcase as part of this conference, and actually tell you today it was ready. Maybe by the time you actually watch this recording, it will be ready. But it's something that is a little script utility, and you pass it some parameters. This is just an example just to show you a little bit about it. And it will actually go through and fire up a connection to the Kentico 12 instance, iterate through the API of the Kentico 12 API and understand where the content is, find all of the CMS.blog posts from the old world, and actually render out and create all the content out of all the fields that I'm passing into serialized XML, a clean, readable XML file that represents each blog post and does a few more special things on top of that. Now, this tool I'm planning to release for free, open source, on a GitHub repo as soon as I can, because I think it's something that can really help the community. I know a lot of my team is excited about it at BizStream. So if you want to know more about this, you can come talk to me. And actually, we have all these ways of doing that now with the conference software. I'm going to be at a table, click an empty chair, chat with me if you want to know more about how or what this thing does. I'm going to try to explain it really quick, though. The result is that for every blog post it finds in the Kentico 12 database, it creates a folder with an XML file and images inside of that folder. So I have a clean folder structure that is like the slug of the article. And I also have a giant XML file that's all of the content, every single 226 blog posts in nicely clean XML representation in one place that I can actually then import into my new page types in my Kentico Xperience 13 database. All right. One of those blog posts looks like this, just to show that this is actually my real content. I've basically serialized all the fields. It's a blog post. There was the old alias path, the new alias paths, because there's that whole URL rewrite thing and redirects that we're going to talk about in a second. The title, the summary, the date, the tags, all that's here. I don't have to retype it in anything. I actually bring it all out and serialize it. On top of that, I'm able to use the Kentico Xperience import toolkit then to read that XML file, break it apart into fields, and I have my way to import it automatically into my new instance, into my new article page type. So I'm using a custom tool that I wrote to get data out into an XML file. Then I'm using the standard tool that's actually been around in Kentico Xperience's world for a long time. Many of you probably have experience with it. If you didn't know about it, I would go read about it. It's that good. And it's something that allows you to just import content the way you want. So you can do that. And it's funny, just when you think it can't be possibly that easy, right? Wait a minute, there's a tool that exports the content. There's a tool that imports the content. That's my migration path. Amazing. Well, it does work. This is the result. I have a pretty cool new Kentico.NET Core instance from McBeav.com. I have an articles folder, and all my articles I have imported into one place with new slugs and everything. I was really happy when this came about because I really didn't want to type in 200 blog posts, right? Once I have that, I'm pretty far along, but then I started to notice some problems. So links, still an issue with redirects. I do have a solution for that with my content extraction tool. I'm actually generating redirect URL file that works with IIS and .NET Core, so you can actually use that to handle the 3-1 redirects if you're moving around URLs for your content types. Images are an issue. There's going to be some image problems because maybe you have a media library that has 10 years worth of image history. It may not work very well. My content tool actually finds all the images that are referenced in an article or a blog post. It downloads all of them and saves them into that same directory that I showed you earlier. That's pretty cool. I'm very happy about that. And this one, this is something that I really tried to do. I spent a lot of time. It didn't really work. There's some technical reasons why. I at least did create a report that shows you where widgets are in use on a piece of content or an article. And if you want to know more about that, again, come talk to me in the session or after the session. I really wanted that to work because I thought that would be just the icing on top. But that's what I'm saying. It's not perfect. It's a good tool, but it's not perfect. But it's definitely saved me a ton of time. The images actually look like this, where here's my one article about Azure App Configuration with Blazor, and all my images came down. I put them in one spot so that way I can clean up that media library. I don't have to have hundreds of images I no longer use. I'm only downloading the ones that I use in my content, and I'm putting that back into the new media library. This folder structure, I can actually just pick up, copy, and put right into the file system, and then import the images, and everything just works in the new Kentico Xperience 13 instance. Pretty cool. I was really happy with the way that turned out. Now we're getting into the .NET Core code, in case you're wondering. So that the content, I found a way to do that with the tool. Again, I'll release that. The code here, I'm not trying to give you a tutorial on how to do every single piece of .NET Core code. The docs do a great job of that. There's a link to the docs. Do that. What I'm going to do instead is actually show you where I got tripped up. I think that's more valuable, so hopefully you'll save some time as well. Middleware. If you're not familiar with .NET Core, you're a Portal Engine developer, please go understand the middleware. Don't even look at Kentico yet. Go click that link I have below there. Understand the middleware. It's the request response pipeline. It's how all .NET Core projects work. Because unlike .NET Full Framework, you don't have bloat. You have nothing when you start up, and you have to add in the way to serve images. You have to add in the way to do routing. You have to add in authentication, authorization. You add things into the middleware. You don't delete or take things out of the .NET Full Framework the way you used to. So go understand that. Totally critical. If you don't understand middleware, don't start writing code. It's that simple. But it won't take that long to understand it, trust me. But it's worth it to go do that study. It's also important in Kentico because here's what the startup of a .NET Core project looks like in Kentico. There's a lot of services that you're adding. You're telling it to use these features like preview and page builder. There's even that set admin cookies that I mentioned before for making sure that the admin tool works. This is so important, and I tripped up here so bad. I had the things in the wrong order. So the vertical order of the way you start, preview has to come before page builder. I learned that one the hard way, and I hope that you don't. So this all matters. The Dancing Goat core project that we're seeing here has a good usage of this, and this may slightly change by the time we have the full version released to the wild, but for now, it's a great map for what to do. Can't recommend it enough. I look at all this to understand how this is going to work in your middleware, in your Startup.cs, okay? Tag helpers are another great thing to use with .NET Core development, especially in MVC. This is an example of an environment tag helper that if the environment matches development, reference the CSS from some NPM Webpack server that's running because your front-end team likes to do that, and NPM is awesome, apparently. We can have a whole different conversation about that. But if it's not in development, you can actually have in the real path to the finished, bundled, compiled CSS that you need to use. Again, there's a link on how to do that. But tag helpers are amazing tools to use in your MVC core world. I highly recommend knowing them and using them. View components. So this isn't 100% in the Kentico documentation. This is why I'm bringing it up. View components are awesome. Please reference them and use them. And this isn't just like a page builder thing. You're going to hear a lot about page builder and how to do widgets and display templates and things like that. But view components give you the way to package and reuse entire chunks of a view outside of page builder or inside page builder, honestly. You can do either one. It's something that it allows you to generate related articles that have the same display as maybe your homepage list of articles. And that's what I'm doing here by using that last line. I'm invoking a view component. Looks like this. The view component class file is very simple. It's got a service that handles dealing with articles. It's getting my related articles by the primary GUID that we're passing in about an article. If there's nothing that's related to it, it's returning nothing. If there are related items, it's returning those. And it's doing that where you're actually showing a view as part of the view component. That's really simple. It's just a section in H3 and then the same partial to show a card, and this will make sense when I show it in a second. The key difference here is that it's not just like a file that you're reusing. It's more of an entire strategy that finally gives us the ability to do reusable UI across projects. I'm going to say that again. It's a way to do reusable UI across projects. I can't tell you how many people have asked me, hey, how can we do this? Portal Engine allowed us to reuse web parts all over the place, and the answer so far has been page builder widgets. Think of this as another layer, another level of saying, I want to reuse my entire set of Razor, the whole view presentation as a component, and I can deploy that as a NuGet package to other projects. So I can write it once and reuse it in other ways, just like you could do with Portal Engine web parts, import, export before. So I strongly recommend that. There's the docs link there on the lower right to check that out as well. And this is an amazing tool to use. This is what we built part of the newmcbeav.com with. And of course, still use the page builder. I'm not saying don't use the page builder. Don't get me wrong. There's a great use for this. I think there's a whole session on just the page builder in .NET Core that was either at the beginning of the day or sometime in the event. The documentation focuses on this. The startup focuses on this. The sample project is there. This is still something to heavily use. Just make sure you've got it set up the right way so you don't have that blank page that I mentioned before. and use it with .NET Core too, not just .NET MVC, MVC 5. So hopefully at this point you're saying, hey, you've shown me a towel, you've got the ring, we're about to hitchhike onto the other spaceship. Ford, beam me up. Sort of. Well, here's what the result. This is the new McBeeve.com. It's live right now. You can go check it out and browse to it. It's actually pretty darn cool and pretty darn fast. I'm really proud of it. I've got a nice view of my articles. That same article component is being reused for my related articles. All sorts of really cool things. Let's take 1 minute here and actually check it out, just so I can show you. So I'm jumping on over. I'm at the homepage here. I'm scrolling. You can see I've got my nice content that comes up. If I look at that article that we were talking about earlier, we've got a nice display view of it, and you'll notice that loaded up pretty darn fast, right? That's one of the benefits of doing this. So I'm going to go back to the home here a second. You can see I've got some other content types, including my speaking events and engagements. I've got some cool things with tags going on. All the taxonomy came across in the content import process. So all my tags are there. If I look for just my Kentico Rocks podcast tags, here are all my Kentico Rocks podcasts. By the way, subscribe to Kentico Rocks on YouTube, and you can do that through this set of links that I have here on my site. Or you can just actually watch the YouTube embedded right here. So this is me and Andy just talking about Kentico content and other things. I talk about both experience and content. So it's a really fast site. I'm really happy about it. I've got a better search experience than I ever had. So if I search for Blazor, I can do that. And again, notice how fast this is. Really excited about the result. I think it's an amazing way to handle it. And we haven't even finished it. There are some improvements we still have yet to do, and I'll talk about that in a second. But check it out, McBeeve.com. That's my blog, and that's the result running of Kentico Xperience 13 in .NET Core. So back to the talk a little bit. You might be wondering, wait a minute, is this ready? Well, like Arthur, and you're not sure, and the world is an uncertain place these days, I'm here to tell you that it's ready. Just as a kind of final few words here, my Experience 12 site with McBeeve.com was good. It was in the portal engine. It did a ton of things for a long time. It was rock solid for years, but it was starting to show some age. There were some maintainability issues. There were some things that I couldn't do, like I couldn't really make it all that accessible because of the old web forms world. And it was kind of fast in a way, but not blazing, and it didn't really do good. These are actually some performance tests that we did. There is some scores, but main thing is you'll see like the time to first byte over 200, over 100, and that's fully output cached in the old world, right? That's not even reading it from SQL. So if it's not a cached page, it would be even slower, but I had some pretty good cache going on. Well, with Kentico Xperience 13, I'm here to tell you that the speed and performance is totally worth it. This is an average of all the pages that our crawler ran at BizStream, and we're doing some automatic testing and measuring of pages. All the pages averages came out to 55 or better. The scores are really good. Now, again, I haven't quite focused on accessibility because my content isn't really accessible from 10 years ago, so I got to work on that. But I've actually seen these numbers hit 99 in testing one-off pages, so it's pretty cool. The team is really happy about it. It's a modern design, in my opinion. I think it looks pretty good. It's a little bit more accessible, and it's ready for .NET 5. So way back at the beginning, when I told you .NET 5 is the future, all we have to do is kind of change a target framework, and things should mostly just work after we relink some NuGet packages. So it's ready for the next 10 years. I'm really excited about that. And if you do the performance comparison, it's 60% faster in the time to first byte, which is a critical metric. But once we finish adding our caching and a few other things, we're predicting that we could see this be 250% faster than before. 250% faster. I'll just say it again. And the developers love working on it. And the marketing team loves the results, me being the marketing team. I'm really happy with it. And I basically, with that, I'm just going to leave you of, so long and thanks for all the fish. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something about .NET Core and the future of where Kentico Xperience is now. You can go check this out today. Download it, use it. Look for my content extraction tool soon on GitHub. Heck, it might even be there by the time you actually see this recording. And I'm really just thankful you attended the session. Hope you found the time valuable. So if you got questions, get a hold of me. You can email me at brian@bizstream.com. Check me out on Twitter at McBeeve. And of course, you can go to thenewmitbeav.com right now. Thanks, everyone.